welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a truly transformative area of modern medicine: mRNA technology, CRISPR gene editing, and gene therapy.
Yeah, these aren't just buzzwords anymore.
Not at all. They're fundamentally changing how we approach disease, right down at the, molecular level. And for you, our listener, who wants to quickly get a solid grasp on what's important.
Which is key these days with so much happening.
Exactly. We've gathered some focused sources on how these incredible advancements are being navigated through the regulatory systems around the world.
That's right. Our deep dive today is really into the global rulebook for these cutting-edge treatments. We're going to try and extract the crucial insights into how different countries and agencies are balancing that breathtaking potential for cures with the absolute need for rigorous safety checks and, of course, ethical considerations.
And hopefully find some surprising connections and those aha moments along the way.
Prepare for some, yeah.
Yeah.
Real aha moments that should leave you feeling genuinely informed.
Okay, let's maybe get everyone on the same page first with a quick look at these core technologies. First up, mRNA technology. It feels like just yesterday it was a pretty obscure field, and now, well, thanks to the COVID-19 vaccines, it's basically a household name.
It really is. That whole experience just highlighted how fast these platforms can move, from concept to massive impact, and how effective they can be.
But the potential now goes way beyond just infectious diseases, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. What's really fascinating about mRNA is its versatility. You can think of it like a set of instructions telling your cells what proteins to make.
Right.
So beyond vaccines, researchers are developing personalized cancer vaccines. Imagine teaching your own immune system to recognize the specific fingerprint of your tumor and attack it. That's the power we're talking about with mRNA.
Right.
We're also seeing significant progress using mRNA for rare genetic disorders, basically giving cells the instructions to make proteins that are missing or faulty.
And even autoimmunity.
Even autoimmunity, yeah. They're exploring mRNA therapies to sort of fine-tune the immune response without just broadly suppressing everything.
That is mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, CRISPR gene editing. I always picture it as incredibly precise genetic scissors.
That's a great analogy, actually. CRISPR-Cas9, the most common system, has really revolutionized our ability to edit genes with remarkable accuracy.
And the big hope is for cures, right?
Exactly. What's particularly game-changing is the potential to essentially cure monogenic diseases, those conditions caused by just a single faulty gene.
Like sickle cell.
Like sickle cell anemia or Leber congenital amaurosis, which is a genetic blindness. In cases like these, CRISPR offers the possibility of directly correcting the root cause. That was pure science fiction not long ago.
And I hear this tech isn't standing still either. Things like CRISPR-Cas12 base editing. What do they add?
Yeah, those are key advancements pushing the boundaries. CRISPR-Cas12, for instance, offers alternative ways to recognize and bind DNA, so it expands the range of genetic targets we can actually hit. And base editing, that's another huge leap. Imagine changing just a single letter in the genetic code without actually cutting the DNA strand.
Less risk of mistakes, then.
It reduces the likelihood of unintended edits, yeah.
Yeah.
So even greater precision in gene repair, these innovations are making gene editing safer and opening up even more possibilities.
Okay, finally, let's touch on gene therapy itself. This is where functional genes are introduced into cells to tackle the disease's underlying cause. And we've seen some amazing results already.
We have indeed. You look at therapies like Zolgensma for spinal muscular atrophy, and Luxturna for that hereditary retinal degeneration. These are prime examples of how gene therapy can be genuinely life-altering.
Truly life-changing for those patients.
Absolutely. Zolgensma can dramatically improve motor function in babies with a devastating condition. Luxturna can restore some vision. These successes really underscore the immense potential here.
But it's not simple, is it?
No, it's definitely not simple. We have to acknowledge the practical challenges involved in manufacturing these complex therapies and, crucially, making sure they're accessible to the patients who need them. That's a whole other conversation.
Okay, so that gives us a solid foundation on the technologies themselves. Now let's dive into the heart of it, the global regulatory landscape. How are different parts of the world handling oversight for these powerful new treatments? Maybe start with the FDA in the US.
Yeah, what's interesting is that the FDA isn't exactly new to this. Their Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, CBER.
CBER, right.
They've actually been reviewing gene cellular, and mRNA therapies for over 25 years.
Wow, that long.
Yeah. So that long history has given them a pretty deep understanding. It's allowed them to develop specific regulatory pathways, recognizing that, mRNA and CRISPR aren't just standard pills. They require tailored safety assessments.
So they're not just using the old rulebook for these new techs.
Not at all. The FDA specifically identified these as developing technologies that need, well, alternative ways to evaluate safety.
Makes sense.
But one consistent thread across all these novel therapies is the FDA's strong emphasis on good manufacturing practices, or GMPs.
GMPs.
Yeah.
Always crucial in pharma.
Absolutely critical. Think of GMPs as the gold standard for ensuring these therapies are made safely and consistently. Like a super strict recipe in a high-tech kitchen. It guarantees purity, quality, and ultimately patient safety. It ensures the therapy works like it's supposed to.
Yeah. You can't have variation when you're editing genes or delivering mRNA. Consistency must be paramount.
What about Europe, the EMA? Are they thinking along similar lines?
Very similar, yes. The European Medicines Agency, the EMA, also prioritizes a really thorough extended evaluation of safety.
Okay.
That involves looking closely at extensive clinical trial data, plus comprehensive preclinical studies checking for any potential toxic effects before it even gets near humans.
And they have specific pathways, too.
They do. Similar to the FDA, the EMA has set up specific regulatory pathways under their equivalent of CBER to handle gene, cellular, and mRNA therapies specifically.
And GMPs are just as important there. Just as important. Huge emphasis on adhering to good manufacturing practices to guarantee the quality of the final product. There's strong international agreement on those fundamentals.
Okay, good to hear. There's alignment there.
Yeah.
Now, what about other big players? Japan, China, and what are the challenges maybe in emerging markets?
Right. This is where we start seeing some interesting variations in approach. Japan, for instance, has been quite forward-thinking.
How so?
They've implemented accelerated regulatory mechanisms. One is called the Sakigake designation.
Sakigake.
Yeah. It's designed to fast-track the approval of innovative regenerative therapies. The aim is really to get promising treatments to patients more quickly.
A faster track in Japan, potentially.
Yeah.
And China, what's their approach?
Well, China is pouring significant investment into biotech, that's for sure. We're seeing a rapid increase in clinical trials there for these advanced therapies.
Speed seems to be a priority.
Speed is definitely a priority in their development process. However, there are ongoing discussions, maybe some questions, around the consistency of their regulatory processes and the overall level of transparency.
Okay, so speed, but maybe some question marks. And I guess the picture in emerging markets is even more complex.
Absolutely. You have a really wide range of regulatory standards across different emerging markets. That presents considerable challenges for harmonization.
Right, trying to get everyone on the same page globally.
Exactly. And it can create real obstacles for developing and distributing these vital therapies worldwide, even though the need is definitely global and growing.
So the science is racing ahead, but the regulation is this complex, evolving patchwork. Let's zoom in on some specific regulatory hurdles. We mentioned manufacturing, but what scientific concerns really keep regulators up at night?
Okay, a primary concern, especially with CRISPR and gene editing, revolves around safety and the potential for what we call off-target effects.
Things happening where you don't want them to.
Precisely. Regulators need to see really robust scientific evidence showing the intended gene edits are super precise and don't accidentally cause harmful mutations elsewhere in the genome.
Or cause problems years down the line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No unforeseen long-term negative consequences. That's crucial.
So it's not just did it work,
Yeah.
but did it only do what it was supposed to do? What about mRNA and gene therapy? Are the main safety worries different there?
Yes, the focus shifts a bit. It's more towards immunogenicity and the delivery systems.
The body reacting to.
Yeah. For mRNA therapies, those lipid nanoparticles used for delivery, they can sometimes trigger an immune response.
Okay.
Similarly, in gene therapy, the viral vectors they often use, like AAVs, you can think of them as harmless delivery trucks for the gene.
Right, the modified viruses.
Exactly. Those can also potentially trigger inflammation or get rejected by the patient's immune system. So careful, prolonged monitoring of patients is absolutely essential.
That makes sense. The body might see these as foreign invaders. We touched on manufacturing consistency being tricky, especially for personalized therapies. Can you expand on why that's such a big regulatory challenge?
It's a major hurdle, honestly, because these are often incredibly complex biological products, and with personalized medicine, each batch might literally be unique to one single patient.
Right, tailored medicine.
So scaling up production while maintaining super strict quality control, ensuring every single batch is consistent with the last one, that's an enormous technical challenge.
And the FDA has specific rules for that.
Oh, yes. They have very detailed chemistry, manufacturing, and controls regulations, CMC regs, that developers absolutely have to meet. It's all about tackling those inherent complexities and ensuring the product is reliable every single time.
Wow. Navigating the regulatory maze sounds almost as complex as the science itself. Thankfully, it seems frameworks are adapting. Tell us about these adaptive licensing models I've been hearing about.
Yeah, adaptive licensing, it represents a really significant evolution in how regulators are thinking about these novel therapies, especially for rare or life-threatening diseases where there's a huge unmet need.
So getting treatments to patients faster.
That's the goal. Both national and international regulators are increasingly using these pathways to potentially give companies faster market access for really promising treatments.
How does that work exactly? Is it full approval right away?
Not usually full approval immediately. These adaptive pathways often involve granting conditional or early approval based on encouraging initial results from trials.
Okay, so conditional. What comes next?
Well, that early approval typically comes with strings attached. The company has to keep collecting more data, real-world evidence, and conduct post-market studies to confirm the long-term safety and effectiveness.
I see.
So it's kind of a phased approach. It tries to balance that urgent need for access with the ongoing need to rigorously evaluate the therapy over time, like a carefully managed rollout, you could say.
That sounds pretty pragmatic. And you mentioned real-world evidence, RWE. How is data from outside traditional trials playing a bigger role now?
RWE is becoming increasingly valuable, hugely valuable, especially for rare diseases where running large traditional clinical trials can be incredibly difficult, sometimes impossible.
Right, not enough patients maybe.
Exactly. So regulators are now looking at data collected during routine clinical practice. Things like data from wearables, patient registries, digital biomarkers, electronic health records.
All the data we're generating anyway.
Right. And this data can give crucial insights into how a treatment performs in a broader range of real patients in real-world settings.
What kind of insights?
Well, it helps us understand long-term outcomes better, identify rare side effects that might not pop up in smaller trials, and ultimately it informs medical guidelines and regulatory decisions. It can potentially lead to earlier patient access and just a much richer understanding of a therapy's true impact.
So the data keeps feeding back into the system, refining our understanding. Now, what about this move towards personalized medicine, especially with gene and mRNA therapies? How's that shaking up the regulatory landscape?
Personalized medicine, yeah, it definitely introduces some unique regulatory factors. One key thing is the rise of companion diagnostics.
Companion diagnostics, tests.
Exactly, laboratory tests. They're designed to identify which patients are most likely to actually benefit from a specific therapy.
Ah, so you test first to see if the therapy will work for you.
Precisely. It helps make sure the right treatment gets to the right patient. That maximizes effectiveness and, just as importantly, minimizes risks for people who probably wouldn't respond anyway.
Makes sense. But that must add another layer of complexity for regulators.
Yeah.
You're approving a drug and a test together.
It certainly does. The challenge is that the therapy and the companion diagnostic often need to be developed and validated pretty much in parallel. That requires really close coordination, solid clinical data showing the link between the test result and how well the therapy works, and making sure the diagnostic test itself is accurate, reliable, and genuinely useful in the clinic. The standards for these tests are evolving too.
These scientific and logistical hurdles are clearly significant. Looking ahead now, what do you see as the future of regulation in genetic medicine? Any major trends on the horizon?
International harmonization is definitely a key area to watch. Groups like the ICH, the International Council for Harmonization, they're working hard to establish global guidelines for gene and cell therapies. Now, progress can sometimes feel a bit slow because, different countries have different priorities and resources.
Sure.
But the goal is definitely more consistent regulatory expectations across different regions. That would help everyone.
And what about technology helping the regulators themselves? AI, maybe?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing more integration of artificial intelligence into the regulatory review process itself.
How would that work?
Well, AI has the potential to help spot anomalies early in clinical trial data, maybe identify inconsistencies in manufacturing processes faster.
Interesting.
It could streamline reviewing massive amounts of documents, assist with risk assessment, maybe even help automate parts of post-market surveillance, like tracking side effects.
So AI could make the process more efficient and maybe even more accurate.
Yeah.
What about public perception? How important is public trust in all this?
Oh, public trust is absolutely fundamental. It's critical. Misinformation or just a basic lack of understanding about genetic engineering can create huge obstacles.
Yeah, fear of the unknown.
Exactly. It can hinder the development and acceptance of these potentially life-saving therapies. So regulatory agencies have a massive role to play in fostering transparency, really engaging with the public, and building confidence in how rigorous and effective their oversight is.
So communication is key.
Open communication and education are essential. Absolutely essential to ensure we advance these technologies responsibly.
This has been a truly illuminating deep dive. It's such a complex and fast-moving field. To try and bring it all together, what are the key takeaways you'd really want our listener to remember from this?
I think the main message is that mRNA, CRISPR, gene therapy, they offer just incredible potential. Really, the potential to transform how we treat and maybe even cure a huge range of diseases right at their root cause.
Right.
And regulatory agencies worldwide, they are actively adapting their frameworks to try and keep pace with these rapid scientific breakthroughs.
It's a balancing act.
It's a constant balancing act, yeah, between fostering innovation, getting these therapies to patients who desperately need them, and ensuring long-term safety through really rigorous scientific evaluation and maintaining super high manufacturing quality.
And the challenges aren't going away.
No, we should definitely anticipate ongoing challenges for regulators. Issues around data integrity, ensuring equitable access to these often very expensive therapies, and just keeping up with the constantly evolving science.
And ultimately, it sounds like collaboration is just essential.
Absolutely. You need close collaboration between the pharma companies developing these, the regulatory agencies globally, the clinicians who will actually use them, and very importantly, patient advocacy groups.
All working together.
All working together, that's crucial for transparency, for speeding up progress safely, and just ensuring the overall safety of these groundbreaking treatments. We have to find that sweet spot between urgently needed innovation and thorough, responsible evaluation, all guided by strong ethical principles.
Well, this has been a fascinating look at how we're starting to govern the very building blocks of life. It really makes you think. Considering these incredible advancements that modify fundamental aspects of our biology, how might our whole understanding of human health and the role regulation plays in it fundamentally evolve in the coming years and decades? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, viewers, for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with your colleagues. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking that subscribe button below, so you never miss out on valuable insights. I'm Brian Edmonds, signing off. See you in the next one.